Okay, let's call this meeting to order. This meeting and all of the meetings of this committee are open to the public. Proper notice is posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of the meeting. Roll call.
Gunderson.
Here.
Brunner.
Here.
Weyauwega.
Here.
Need a motion to approve the minutes from the February 9th, 2015 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from February 9th. I'll second that.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Citizens' appearances. Dean, you're here for later on, right?
Yes.
Oh, I guess we'll just move into the engineer's report.
Dean, if you want to take the East Alfred right away?
Sure, and we got two projects out there in East Alfred. The one that I really wanted to talk about was one that you guys have no money involved in, and it's from the city limits down to Gills Landing. And then we can talk about the one, I see there's an invoice out there, and if we need to talk about that, we can do that as well. But the first one, we are looking at repaving, finally, County Trunk Highway F from the city limits all the way down to Gills Landing. And you probably have seen, we've replaced culverts here in the last year, patched those over, and cutting some trees down on the far end. And I see now the utility company, power company's gonna be coming and setting their poles back a little bit further. That wasn't for our needs or anything, but they took this opportunity here now to be doing some of that work as well. But we are gonna have a public information meeting, inviting all the people that live along that portion, and let them know what our plan is. Our plan is to get in there right away in the spring. I wanna let you make sure that you know that we're gonna be okay with the fishing season, and the fact that it's gonna be gravel. They can get down there, they'll be able to get through there. It's not gonna be ripped up like the piece that was in the city this past year and doing utility work and all that kind of stuff and open trenches. It's gonna be gravel through the whole thing. We're gonna put a layer of gravel over the top of what's out there, chew it all up, reclaim it, pack it in, and pave it. We put a little schedule together, and again, a lot of it is hinging on the weather, when we can get started, just with the weather, the temperatures, getting hot mix plants going and stuff like that. We're hoping that we can get that thing done in about 3 to 4 weeks, and get in there, haul the gravel in. That's going to go quickly. Chewing it up will be chewed up in a day or two, and then shaping it and paving it will be a few days. And there's always some weather issues in there and stuff like that, and there may be a few things that we don't see, but it should go pretty quickly. We need to have that thing done by the end of June, before some funding that we're getting from the state. It's a local road improvement program, and we want to make sure that's done. That's why we're going when we're going. There may be a few complaints, again, the fishermen and stuff like that, but again, we're going to do everything we can to, it's going to be gravel surface at the bare minimum, and we're going to instruct our people to let those people get through there. They may say, hey, I'm going to a different landing, I'm going to go somewhere else until this thing gets paved, but then so be it. But that public information meeting that we're going to have right here in the library is scheduled right now for March 18th and at 6:30 p.m. and I'll be there, and we'll have our schedules and stuff like that, and just kind of go through that with them and see if they have any questions. So I guess we wanted to ask you, do you have any questions on that project? Big thing that has been out there over the years from the city's point of view is how wide can we make that thing?
Right.
And what we're gonna do is try to get it as wide as that road core allows us all the way down. We're not gonna be totally reconstructing, but we think we're gonna be somewhere in that 24 to 26 foot wide pavement. If we can do that and then paint the white lines at 22 foot, then there'll be could be a 1 foot or a 2 foot paved shoulder. And that's kind of what we're thinking. At one time, the city was asking if we'd have a separate trail going down there, and that's not gonna happen through the wetland and the wetlands that are down there. So the best thing we can see there is get a paved shoulder there for people to walk on it or bike on it or what have you. Any questions? Dad, do you have any questions? Okay.
No,
That was
and
the
then,
only one I had.
Okay.
and then the other item, we just put the bill on there just for review by the committee, and that's cost to date.
Yes.
So that would be charged back to 2014.
Yep. So you don't need action on that tonight? It's just
No,
a,
it's an information item, so.
okay.
And what we will be doing there too, when we do that reclaiming and shaping and paving going down to Gill's Landing, we're gonna put one layer on all the way down to Gill's Landing, then we'll come back again with the surface mat all the way through and into the village, or into the city limits, and then up to and through Lincoln Street. And so that'll be wrapping up that whole project and then striping it all the way down.
Just a question, if you don't mind, like what you did on X, and I've seen, many places where you come in and reclaim it or cut it, whatever you did, and then you just put the gravel down, eventually it becomes, because you didn't repave that, what was the
More like a
process on
ceiling
X?
or a-
Okay, what part of X?
Well, just right out here by the tracks and heading towards New London.
Yeah, there we reconstructed quite a bit going out to the industrial park, but we start out usually, we chew up the blacktop that's there.
Yeah.
And now it's gravel, and then we'll pick that up, set it off the side, do our major reconstruction underneath. We're not gonna do that on F. We're gonna be
Right,
just
right.
putting gravel on top of it, chewing it up and then building it up,
Mhm.
and getting more base underneath it down to Gill's Landing. Little different than X, both X going towards New London and X going west here. We totally reconstructed
Well,
that.
going west, that was different, but you didn't repave over X going to New London, right? I mean, it was like you
About
put.
a year ago, year and a half ago, you're thinking?
Yeah, because it was like gravel for the longest time, like a real fine gravel until it got packed down or something. That's what I've.
Oh, I
It's
wonder
like-
if you're
it's
talking about
not-
the
I've seen
seal
it in many
coating.
places.
That's what it was.
Seal coating that we did
Yeah.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
We put oil over the top of the blacktop that was there and put chips over that and left those chips.
Then eventually it
Yeah,
becomes
they
its own
pack-
thing,
they
right?
pack- And we roll it in and they pack those
Yeah.
chips into the oil, and then we leave it sit there for a little while. If we take it off right away, a lot of times the
Oh, yeah.
heat and everything would have that oil bleed through, and we
I
leave a
figured
little
while you-
excess gravel.
While you were here, I just wanted to ask. 'Cause
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was a process at work, but just curious.
Yeah, it's a, what we do a lot of times in the rural areas, we usually don't do that in the urban areas where
Yeah.
there's curb and gutter and storm sewer, and that stuff all gets in the storm sewer, and that's kind of bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we won't be doing that down on F. There'll be more of a, I used to say it's like a great big rototiller that in your garden. And they come in there with the teeth on it, and they're just chewing up that blacktop and intermixing, making it more like about 3/4 inch gravel is what we want. I think they say inch or 2 inches that we can allow it to be, but we'd like it kind of ground up a little bit finer. Then we can get the grader out there and start shaping it, get the proper crown in the road, and then paving that.
What's the life expectancy on a road like that around
I,
here?
I say on an average, we say 20 years. Does that mean we don't have to crack fill and seal
Oh,
coat and
yeah.
stuff? Sure, we're gonna have to do that, but hopefully it'll last. That particular road down that way, it's a little bit sensitive with, the soils and what's underneath there, but we just
Softer
don't have the cash to go and
Oh, yeah,
dig everything
right.
up down there. Probably what's down there, you probably have a lot of corduroy tree logs that have been fallen down across the roadbed to kind of bridge over the crappy soils that are down there. That's probably what we would find, but we're still thinking, 20 years. We don't really get a lot of heavy traffic down. You don't get the big farm equipment, going down there too often. There might be
Right,
somebody cutting
right.
some marsh hay or something like that, but for the most part, the loads, we don't have the big loads down there like we have out on X's with the big farms and
Sure.
big farm equipment. So we're hoping for 20.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else there, I don't know how much of a meeting you have here, but we have a couple other things here too. Just want to let you know, I just found out on Friday, CN Railroad, I know some of your friends and my friends too, they contacted me and said they are going to be redoing that crossing again this year. They did it 2 years ago, and it was more of a temporary fix. And this summer, right away in the spring, they're hoping to completely reconstruct that crossing. So it's going to be closed for, they said, up to a week.
So they were just prepping us with all these stops to get us.
Yeah, I don't
used to-
know about
yeah.
that, but I've been hearing that,
Wow.
but they've been talking, and they started the conversation with us, and if we wanted to set up the detour for them and bill them for it. and the detour, we did that, I think, 2 years ago. And we went out on 110 to the crossings, 2254, all the way around over to Weyauwega, and back again on Highway 10. So that's out there. Just got that news on Friday. Thought you shouldn't be aware of it.
Did they say about when that would be? Just spring for now?
Yeah, you know, again, probably the same as us a little bit in the fact hot mix plants, but we'll make sure they don't do it at the same time we're doing F. We'll have to kind of coordinate that stuff with them.
Okay.
And then, you know, I'd like your input on it then too. If there's a better time or a worse time, never a good time.
Yeah.
You know, but you need to kind of be thinking about that if there's any community events, any other big projects going on. I know you got your big addition at the Hager Pier, and, you know, I'm not sure where they're coming in with all their different materials, but, you know, it's probably not, it's probably more concrete and stuff coming from Highway 10 probably, I would imagine, but that's out there. And then the last thing, we also were kind of, heck, we're ripping up Weyauwega, so we might as well, you know, do a little bit more, we figured. But we're thinking about East Alfred Street from Lincoln Street on in to, is it Pine Street? By the church. You know, we're thinking about doing some sealing of that pavement there. Now, just that question you had before about chip sealing out on X, we won't do that in the city. We have, there's a couple products out there that we've been fooling around with a little bit. One of them is Onyx from Miggs as a distributor in our area here. Just share that with you. It's a sealant over the top of the existing blacktop. They're talking that it will take a full day for it to cure and dry and all that kind of stuff. So it would be a huge undertaking again, trying to communicate with the property owners, as long as they have driveways there. And if we decide to go with this group here, we probably want to have a public information meeting to bring all those people in. And unfortunately, public information meetings don't always get a good response. You know, if we get 20–25% of the people there, we're probably lucky. So we may have to get some letters out to them too and communicate. And City Hall, you know, needs to know too, so you can help us communicate. But it's a challenge, and what we want to do is get all their vehicles, boats, all their toys out for a day, get them parked on the side streets, and then let us come in there and seal it. It's something that's good to preserve that pavement and make it last longer, so we don't have to put a lot of money into repaving and stuff like that, but it's a big undertaking as far as communication to everybody, fire, emergency services, all, you know, probably make sure we do it on a day there's not picking up garbage and all those type of things too. We got to coordinate all of that. And I just thought I'd throw this out there, and Thad and Patrick, you know, are there other streets that you may be interested in doing? And one I think of is your Main Street. You know, there probably hasn't been anything really done with that since it was built several years ago. Maybe you've done some crack filling
It
or
is,
something. But
yeah, and we did meet with Lance and Todd
Okay.
last week about crack filling. Because
Okay.
we do have a budget, and then our most recent Pazer rating, I guess, process we went through, Cedar Corp had put together sort of a wish list
Okay.
for
Good.
crack filling. And so
Yeah.
we did get that to Todd and Lance, and then they said they would come back and
Get
say,
a
no,
number
here's.
to you, okay.
Yep.
And that's probably what we're gonna do with our piece of East Alfred Street or County F. We would probably go out and do the crack filling and then put this over the top
Yep,
of that.
and that's what they mentioned too. They
Okay,
figured they'd
good.
be in, and they talked a little bit about Onyx too,
Yeah.
so.
And I just thought, seeing that company's in here, and, you know, and maybe you don't wanna do it on Main Street. Maybe you wanna go try something else, you know.
I think right downtown it was on that list for crack filling, or at least.
Correct, but
potential was-
using
Yeah.
this on the Main Street.
Sure, yep.
And again, I'm not, we have not used this before, just, we've been hearing a lot of sales pitches on it. You know, what it looks like, it would be nice and, you know, make that look nice and bright and fresh. You know, I'm not sure if you have an experience with
I
it.
have not
Thad.
used that.
And so there's another product out there from G Asphalt. We've been using that a little bit. It doesn't make it black, but what it does is that particular asphalt sinks in and around the stones and rejuvenates that oil in there so that the stones don't start popping out and then you start having potholes. I mean, eventually it will, but if you can do this type of stuff every 5 years or so, you can preserve that and keep it going. It's just like you do to your own driveways, concrete or blacktop, or repairing your roofs or whatever, just some preventative maintenance is always good. So, just something for you to think about. I guess we're in the process of getting you some numbers, and you guys can make
Yep.
some decisions on that.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
And that's all I have.
One thing I had for you, East Alfred landscape restoration, what's the schedule for starting on that?
Yeah, I don't have one, but obviously we want to get that all done, as
You're gonna have
soon-
that done before you do any paving.
well, at least the surface mat, so we may be having to, juggle those around there, and I know Todd and I talked that we want to get the landscaping done before we put the surface mat down. So I don't know, again, exactly when that is. Here, we're saying, on this, we're saying May 11th to, June 8th, is when we're gonna do the paving. But who knows, this might float a week or two depending on when the weather gets good and hot
So you're
mix plants
thinking
open.
landscaping potentially May? is what
Yeah,
you're
it would
shooting
have to be, if this thing sticks, yeah, we'd be in there around, the middle of May. You bet.
Okay. Because what
We'll
else do
keep
we
in
have on
touch.
that, what else do we have on that project? We have the landscaping, we have the driveways, and the
Yeah,
final surface.
yeah, and we got manhole adjustments and stuff like that.
And we got
too.
one water service needs to be buried.
Okay, okay.
That was one thing, that was,
Yeah, so we got a fair amount of things, but obviously you wanna do that right away, so.
okay.
I'll try to get you something on that,
Just an
to
idea.
Patrick and to
Yep.
you, so you know what's going on there. Yeah, we definitely wanna get that done before we put the surface down.
Okay.
Snow plowing,
It's going pretty good.
Going okay?
On our end,
Yep.
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 Yep, we've been happy with it, so.
okay, yep, let us know. If
Yep.
there's some problems or some other things we need to look at.
I'll let you know tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that.
Should be like the first,
And we really plowed since we got that going, maybe once or
Twice, I
maybe
think.
twice, okay.
Yeah.
Not much though,
No.
yeah. All right, well, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
yep.
Wastewater treatment project.
Okay, on the, just as a real quick update on that, the plans are in the final phase of being completed in the next 2 weeks. It'll be out posted on the websites for contractors. Bid opening is scheduled for April 14th, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And then we'll review the bids, and then we have a tentative Public Works Finance Committee meeting on the 20th and City Council on the 21st. So that's kind of the schedule for a treatment plant. Now, in discussions with Don and Patrick and the team on the treatment plant, Don had brought up the idea of using, we had one clarifier, the one closest to the road was going to be abandoned. Don asked if, because we have that concrete structure underneath the road in the middle of the drive lane, that used to be kind of a quasi septic receiving where overflow could go and then be let in. Well, that valve is broken on that, and it's about 2,000 gallons storage. Don has the tankers that come in with 4,000 or 5,000 gallons, so they can't dump their whole loads. They only have to dump what they can. So Don asked the question of the designers: can we utilize the clarifier, take the guts out of it, and then put a cover on it, and then bleed, and then put a pipe into the sewer system with a valve on it, so we can bleed it in whenever we want overnight. And what that would also do is septage and holding tank waste is a lot of food for the treatment plant, whereas with AgriPure we're getting a lot of clean treated water. So the more food we can put in there, the better it is for the treatment process. So what we looked at is at about a $70,000 cost. There's we can cover the septic receiving. We can put in a discharge box where they can back up to it with their semis, open the valve, let it go, then they leave. And it's got some SCADA system in there for level controls. But Don will be able to, at the end of the day, crack the valve, bleed it in overnight to the process system. What he has seen right now, and Patrick is seeing, is there's about $800 to $900 a month in revenues coming from haulers, because the haulers like coming here. It's the cheapest place in the area to come and discharge. So if you run that at about $800 to $900 a month, that's about $10,000 a year. And at 70,000, it's a 6 to 7 year payback. And if you, that's only with 2 haulers you use right now.
Right now, we just have Hyler run, and then very, very infrequently one of the other haulers comes in.
Okay.
The name escapes me off the top of my
I
head,
don't
but,
remember who it is.
but I know,
Pretty much it's just Hyler right now. We
Yeah.
haven't had to bill anybody else. We
Right.
have contact info, but they haven't.
and really
billed.
because there's familiarity with what they do, not that other haulers haven't asked yet, but that's the only one that we really deal with right now. But the word is that for the $8.30 per 1,000 gallons that we charge, that we're the most efficient and the most cost-effective place for them to be dumping their waste. And so it's the upgrade, instead of abandoning that clarifier, if we can modify it to be more of a septic receiving station, like Thad said, 5-6 years, we can pay it back, the cost or the expense we would put into it up front. But that 5-year, 6-year payback is based only on the amount that we get right now.
Right now.
And right now, we really just have one hauler come up, hook their hose up, and then just dump in. And when they dump in, our guys are stuck. We can't leave the plant or anything like that. But the thought is that we'd be able to recognize more revenue there, and in 5-6 years, or whenever we pay it back, it's just an extra revenue source from the plant, and it's gonna help us run better, because the more and more that Agri-Pure builds out their plant, or in their cheese plant, they're also building out their treatment plant that they have. And so they've been telling us that they're gonna be running cleaner and cleaner. They'll be sending us more stuff, but it's going to be clearer and clearer. So we've looked at it as a good investment to make this modification. And that, as of right now, we've got that in the plans, that it's something that we feel pretty good about, that in a couple of years, we'll start turning a profit on that. So,
How many gallons does a clarifier get you?
we'd be lowering it a little bit, right? What do we got right
We
now?
won't utilize the full
10,000
capacity of
gallons
it. I
is
think
what
it's
it's-
a lot more than that. I think it's like 20,000-30,000 gallons. The
Okay.
clarifier
Okay.
is a lot bigger than the
Yeah,
tank
it's a
that's
lot
out there right
deeper,
now.
too. Right.
But then we've got to put in like a,
We gotta put a
Or
fillet in the
false-
bottom
yeah.
so it all drains to the plug. But like Don says, is when they come in with a full loads, now they can back up, pull the gate, unload, and then go. Now they have to, it takes them a while because we can't take it all.
So we'd at least be able to take full trucks then?
Yes.
oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
So we just need approval to move forward with that. We will have the cost for the engineering to add that in at the council meeting. This just came up last week, but we wanted to run it past you guys.
Have you gone back, Patrick, and looked at all the other add-ons and things that we were looking at last time to see if they're still,
What do you mean add-ons?
well, or upgrades and wish list things that the last time we were looking at building, expanding a treatment plant, we,
Okay, yeah.
remember we talked about that and seeing if they were still all viable. Have you looked at all
Yeah.
those things and,
We've been reviewing everything over the last few months, and I guess over the last year, we've been very regularly reviewing everything we've had, and we still feel pretty good about where the cost will probably come in.
Yeah, and it's not to say, we don't have a crystal ball with the bidding atmosphere right now, and we were looking at a $5 million job last time. I think we should be right around that mark too. I mean, we can do it as an alternative deduct too. That if
Where you have
it's
the
coming,
option
you
on
don't
it,
want to, we
you know.
can take it out.
What we're looking at right now is, I don't want to call it a middle of the road improvement to what we're looking at. I mean, we could get pretty high tech and try to meter how much waste is coming out of each truck. Fiddle around with, I guess, a better metering system, but we've thought that for right now, we should be able to get by with the setup we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff you can do, card swipes for the truckers when they come in, they swipe it, they get in, they swipe it when they leave, so you know they're there when they dumped, what they dumped, all that stuff. But at this point in time, what we want to do is we want to go bare bones, not quite bare bones, but get it to where you can accept septage, and if it turns out to be that it is profitable, that we can upgrade stuff in the future, and then it's less maintenance for the guys. But right now, that's what we're trying to get by, so you do have a septage receiving because you are getting loads in.
Yeah. Now, for all that equipment and all those options that we had picked, we did go back and revisit all those things,
Yes.
because the whole plant is built and designed to house certain pieces of equipment, so yeah, we did
You did, okay.
run back on those things. And we had to, because if there would have been a significant price difference, we probably would have had to go out and rebid out all that equipment, but we did go through and review all that stuff, so.
All right.
And of the 4 pieces of equipment we purchased, 2 of them had no increase, one had a real minimal increase, and the other one was, on a $300,000 piece was, $3,500, so less than 1%.
Okay.
You know, the other ones were, 2 were 0 and the others were very, very minimal for being 2 years delay.
so.
You wanna bid that as an alternate? You wanna bid it straight up?
Just do it right in the project.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
You wanna take both of them at the same time or individual? 2 recommend to go forward with it.
Well, let's talk about the second one, and then then you can kind of cut
Emer-
back and decide.
The emergency generator, what we're looking at here, DNR code requires that you have 2 power sources for every wastewater treatment plant. What you have right now is you have 1 feed that comes from across the river, and then you have a second feed that comes in from a different direction. It comes from a different substation. It comes from the same substation, different feeds.
Okay.
So now if that substation goes down, you're out of electric for a short term, because now they've done that upgrade where they brought another electric source to come in to feed that substation. So there is some redundancy, but there's also a time frame for them to understand what's down, get out and make the changes, so it's not an automatic switch that things go over. The DNR will go along with what you've had because you've always had it. They haven't told us you have to change. However, today's world, they run generators. Most of the plants that we go to have auxiliary generators put in because they don't have the luxury of a dual feed like you do. The dual feed is approximately $25,000 by the time you get done with the transfer switches and everything. The generator is right around $70,000. What the generator does is gives you reliability, because generator's there. When you lose power at the plant, generator's set up that within a certain short time frame, it'll kick on, and then it'll make the transfer. It'll do an automatic transfer over to the power, and the plant will be up and running. As we had a couple years back, we had that storm that came through. The treatment plant was out for power for about 10, 11 hours, and the water was up to the brim of the treatment plant without going direct discharge to the river, without treatment. And Patrick has talked with the insurance company that you have a program now that you can get a generator within 12 hours if it's available.
They clarified the very quickest you can get it is 12 hours. Now, what they would get it to you for is the regular price. So if I called today when everybody's got power and I say, hey, we need a generator, they'll get it to us for the regular rate like it is today. But there was a little bit of a miscommunication when we were at the insurance policyholders conference, or when I was there last year, which everybody would be invited for this April, and I'll have more info on it. But they had said that within 12 hours you would have a generator. And so the thought on our end was we just have to get to 12 hours. The problem is when we clarified that, they basically said, well, the quickest we can get you a generator is 12 hours. And the window they gave was 12 to 14, but more realistically 13 to 14 hours. Which isn't the worst thing, because we could just pay a regular rate when we need it, if we would need it. The problem with that is when we had that storm, basically everybody was down. None of the plants were running. Agri-Pure was down. Some of the others were down. And without any power, the treatment plant was down too. And we had, in 10.5 hours, we filled it up to the brim, and at 10.5 hours, we got all the power back. So that was a good thing. We didn't have to dump anything to the river, back anything up to the homes. But the problem we have is, now we found out how long it takes when everybody's down, how long we can run our treatment plant, or at least fill it up. The discussion in town, and we talked a little bit, we had a meeting with Agri-Pure today, and I had asked them again a little bit on what do they anticipate for their plant? Have they upgraded any generators or anything like that? And they said, well, they're kind of going to leave it hanging in the wind. They're not really sure what they want to do, but they're not happy if they'd be down. But the big thing for us is we know in 10.5 hours we'll fill the plant. If we rely on this other program, we can get a generator. It just might be 14 to 15 hours, or at least 12 at the very quickest. So the problem is that good enough? Knowing that you can fill your plant before you can get a generator. I don't know that it is. I know I don't feel very good about it. But in looking at some of the other options we may have, we talked a little bit with the fire department. They've got generators on 2 fire trucks, and we asked them, well, in the event that we would be down or we would need any power, well, what type of a situation or solution would you have? And they said, well, there's 1 fire truck that sits at their office to keep their computers and their radios running. They had mentioned that if they ever needed a truck that was running their office, at the very least, they're assuming that all the rest of their trucks would be out on some kind of a call where they weren't sure that they could guarantee us a fire truck that could get anything going. And then if you back out a little bit out of just the treatment plant or just what the fire department can provide, you look at the city hall building that we're putting in brand new. And I don't know that we've really said too much about getting a generator there. And even if we would get a generator, I don't know where you would put it at city hall if we're going to make the front and the back a nice looking type building. The comment, I guess, that we've had when we've talked about this since that storm came 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. I mean, it's been back and forth. Do we need a generator? Can we get by? And the answer really is we just don't know. And based on that, knowing that we need some type of an office, a city hall, because back in August of 2013 we were running around out in the street with our vehicles, and I mean, we got by, but if we've got a server up and running, I mean, our server would have a battery backup on it, but if we don't have power to the phones or anything else at City Hall, we wouldn't really be up and operational there. But the thought is, perhaps if we're relocating Public Works down to the treatment plant with the offices, and if we would ever have a situation in town where we would need power or we'd need something running, for sure we need the treatment plant to have power at some point. And for sure, there is some office space there. So we're thinking potentially it's a good idea to just include a generator with the treatment plant. And then we'll know for sure that we'll always have power for the treatment plant and for our offices, as opposed to not really knowing.
And with the treatment plant upgrade we're doing right now, we are moving the SCADA system that controls your water system. That's coming out of City Hall and going down to the treatment plant.
Right.
So the treatment plant offices would function. Everything for Public Works would be out of there, with any type of emergency.
I mean, don't really have the best answer either way. I mean, I'd love to say for $25,000 we could just have that second feed of power at the plant, but in reality it's 2 feeds, but they come from the same spot. So.
And what we can do, I mean, with your direction is we can bid. Again, we can do the same thing with generators. We can bid it as an alternate and a deduct if we want to take it out of it. If we feel it's too much and we want to take it out and we put it into the project, if we put it into the project as a deduct, if we want to take it out, we take it out, and we can always go to the second feed with the We Energies if we feel that it comes in a lot more than we expect.
Yeah. In our plans, we've always had that generator pad set up in there, so we've always assumed that we'd have a place for one, and we'd always have the hookups for one at the very least. So that's something that we'll still have.
How much power do you actually need out there to keep it going?
There's certain functions that we need to keep running, and worst case scenario, we'd have to run
Oh,
our
you have to
pumps
run- you have to run
and our
all the pumps.
disinfection.
Yep.
So how many watts is that?
Well, I'd
You
have
know,
to
we've
check.
got
I
it,
know
we've talked about it, but it was,
right now we're running just for the connection to the treatment plant, we're right at the 600 amp service. but they're putting an 800 amp service in to make sure we're big enough. So, I mean, those pumps are 25, 30 horsepower pumps, and there's 3 of them. That's just lifting the waste. That's not your blowers, that's not everything else, UV disinfection.
Yeah, I guess I'd just be curious what the right size is to make sure we're getting the right size for what we need.
Sure.
But that'd be my one curiosity point, you know, what does it take to keep it running and functioning? Because in all reality, is it gonna be more than 10 or 11 hours? Probably not around here. Could it be? Sure. But
Mhm.
in all likelihood, it's probably not gonna be that long, so we just, I guess, right-sized it to make sure that we're not, you know, buying a huge generator for the sake of buying it.
Mhm.
That'd be my one curiosity point. Otherwise, I think it makes sense, because if you're gonna pay 25 grand for a redundant service that doesn't benefit you, well, you know, if it's only gonna be a little bit more, then yeah, the generator sounds like the smart idea, because then you have a true backup. Do we know what it takes to service the generators, like an annual cost too, that we see in the future?
It would depend on who you go with, but yeah, I mean, you wanna
could probably build
exercise
that
them or
in.
at least run
Right.
them and that stuff too.
Yeah,
so.
DNR code is you have to run them every month under full load.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So Don will have to do that, just fire it up and run the plant for a day.
But that'd be something to know too, is what the
Mhm.
ongoing cost is gonna be.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we haven't done any quoting or anything like that on it. It's just been,
I like the idea of having it as an alternative.
You're right.
The deduct?
Yeah, the one question I would just have is just making sure that we have the right amount for what we gotta run,
mhm.
figured in there.
In case it comes back.
Somebody smarter than me with electrical knowledge.
You quote that with a trailer mount? So it can be pulled around?
We have one now, but for the size that we probably need for the plant, I don't know if
I
that's
don't
one
think
that you
that'll run the
wanna.
plant. That right now, the one that we have now that's trailer mounted will run the lift station on East Street.
And the other ones in the
Yeah.
industrial park too, that we
Right.
towed them around right now. But yeah, but we do have one, it's parked at East Street whenever we're not using it, but we do have one that we towed around. So. And that one we use quite a bit, just because it seems
And-
like north of the city, power ends up running in and out quite a bit.
And the thing with that one is we leave it at East Street because East Street's your main lift station, and if you pull it off of East Street, if that needs it, and you pull it off to pump another one, you're eventually gonna flood that one out right away.
All right, so I guess we're doing those two separately, huh? Since,
Were we, I forget now, backing up, were we looking at deducting both of them, or
No.
you're just looking at doing the first one and
doing
then
the first one,
alternative
deduct on the second one.
Yeah, then
Right.
we'll look at it.
So it'd be 2 motions then, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So one motion, I just have to look at how
One
we listed
motion
that
would
in there
be-
would be.
Put in the addition of the septic receiving station
Addition.
addition to the water treatment project. Or the planned water treatment project, and I'll make a motion for that.
All right, I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Then I'll make a separate motion to have a separate, what do we call it, bid,
Alternative deduct?
alternative deduct for the emergency generator, addition to the project.
I'll second that one too. All in favor? Aye. Carries.
We'll get that taken care of, thank you.
Thank you. Aggie Pure expansion. Aggie Pure.
Yeah, the big work on our end is with the treatment plant, obviously, but we also had met with them about some of the issues that they're having with flow along Third Avenue, and I believe that was last month that we had recommended moving forward,
Yeah.
looking at upsizing that pipe. We're working with them because they're also going to be replacing their lateral and their metering station hopefully in concert with us, but in any result there, we're hoping to build that whole infrastructure up big enough so that if they do go through with a second or third phase on their project, that will already be big enough there so we're not digging up twice.
Okay.
One of the things we've been talking about, it's not completely relevant to this committee, but we've got so many little projects and topics going on with their project in the neighborhood there. We did have Jim Kelney out here today. He came and met with us with AgriPeer. We are looking into some of the title searching there, to see where the rail spur runs along the treatment plant property, because it's going to impact, we're looking at building the treatment plant right in that little area there. But we are looking at all the different projects and transactions that'll go forward with AgriPeer, whether we should just make one big developers agreement and have everything all encompassed in there, or if we should just go project by project. And it's looking like project by project might be the best way to go, even though it seems kind of piecemealy, but they're moving forward obviously with their expansion, and they're hoping that 85 to 90% of the new value is going to be created with their project by the end of the year, and they're still aiming for spring of 2016 to have everything up and running on their end.
Okay.
West Main Street and Lakeshore Drive, the co-op development update, those plans are about 90% complete. We'll be putting that out to bid very soon. Same with the Third Avenue sewer replacement. We're gonna put that in the same project, and get those out on the streets. And we're looking, as Patrick said, the co-op, or AgriPro is asking us when are the bids being opened. I mean, we just approved it, but we're looking to open either in April or early May and get started from there. So Patrick and I will work on the schedule with those guys and go from there.
Okay.
So that's the only update we have there.
We have the agreement with them, right? If they weren't to build, that they would cover the cost.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and then we do have a bigger developers agreement that's coming through for you guys too, on the cost share on these infrastructure upgrades too, so.
Okay. That all we have for that?
Yes.
So we're on to garbage and recycling?
Yep, just a quick update. Thanks, Dean.
Hey, Dean, thanks.
You have a good one.
Can I take this?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just gonna get you a copy.
Yep, no,
Go ahead.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Take care. With the garbage, tomorrow's the first day with Harder's coming to town. In your packet, you've seen copies of the letters. Now, we've sent letters to property owners on a recent citizen survey residential mailing list. We sent those out on the 19th and the 26th of February. We also ran display ads in the County Post, which pulls this notice out of the legals and gets it into the Weyauwega Fremont section. A little bit of a cost upgrade on that, but at least it's in the
Right.
Weyauwega section. We ran that on the 19th and the 26th. Angie ran an article in the paper about the garbage conversion. I think that was on the 19th as well. And then I think we talked a little bit about the water bill and the timing of the water bill. The next water bill is going out like next week, so that'll be a week or two into the garbage. But we've sent out a lot of notice. I know there's been a lot of conversation on Facebook about it, so people are aware. But tomorrow is the first day with Harder's. They did come last week. I did ride around town a little bit with them. We pointed out the mobile home park. We pointed out Lakeshore Court and some of the little intricate areas of the city. The easiest note that Harder's took down was no matter where they are through the neighborhoods, if there's a red fire sign that says Town of Weyauwega in the front yard, it's very likely that that's not supposed to be picked up by us. And that sounds, pretty simple, but they've got a very, very large copy of our zoning map, and it shows how all the residential properties are laid out. And so they'll be running around with the map. They're sending their best driver, or one of the best, tomorrow, and he'll be the regular pickup guy. They're also sending their operations manager to ride along all day tomorrow, just to make sure that things are going smooth, or at least for the first week. But that's pretty much the update. I'm not naive enough to think that there might not be a couple issues here and there. We've gotten a lot of calls on people with their garbage bags and whether they have to bag things, and it'll be a change, but
I had a question this morning from a resident wanting to know where they were going to start.
going, yeah, we're not
North
sure
side,
for sure.
south
That's why
side.
the 6 a.m. covers it all, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we really don't know where they're gonna start
I think
yet.
We-
they're,
we
they're probably
don't
still
yet.
trying to establish it too, I'm
Yeah.
sure. 'Cause they're gonna have
Just
to
tell them
learn
we're
the
gonna
town
start at
a
your
little
Yeah,
place.
cause they were
Just
wondering
tell
if they
them.
need it
Yeah.
out right by 6 or if they can still do it at 7 like they do normally.
Yeah, and that's
When
the
anybody's
problem.
asked me, I told them the night before, at least until we
Yeah.
figure out
And they don't
how they're
wanna
gonna
put
do
it out, cause they said they had
Oh,
cat issues.
oh, critters.
Yeah, it'll be 6 a.m. is, I believe, that's what our contract says.
And you'll-
That's,
Yep.
you
They'll
know
each-
for sure it'll be out.
1 or 2
It'll-
weeks, they'll know.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
what I
All
told
that,
them.
you know, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to report on what the route is back through, we can get that for you. But right now, I mean, they're looking at it and saying,
Might be something handy for Becky, just so that way if she gets the question, she can just hand them a piece
Yeah,
of
if she
paper.
wants to know, I don't really
Or at
care as
least
long as it's
general,
all picked up.
general
by-
timeframes maybe for area or something like that.
sure.
As long as it's all picked up at Wednesday morning, it's
Yeah.
really all I care
Yeah,
about.
oh yeah,
All right.
yeah. So that's the update on that. It'll be a conversion for sure, and we'll get through
For
it.
sure it will.
Okay.
All right. Discussion and possible action on extending the limited term employee through June.
Yep, and on all these items here, you do have a little write-up in your packet. We did,
I mean, you're not gonna say anything?
right, or very little, I guess, so we can get done by 6. No, essentially, we had hired on the limited term employee because of the other employee that's been off on leave, because of the accident that he had. Off the job, for sure, but, at first, it looked like he was gonna be out of work until mid to late April, and that was something that, it was a timeline that came up a week after the occurrence, so it was pretty preliminary. It's looking like, for now, preliminarily, his doctor's saying, well, it's gonna be probably mid to late May before he's back, and even at that, that's just kind of out there 2 months, and that could change too. The question we have, or the question I have, is to make sure that our staffing stays at the 4 full-time people. We've had them all fully to work. We need to make sure that we do have that 4th person, especially when it gets to the spring and summer, when people are looking at vacations or training. Right now, the reason why we had gone up to April was with the limited term employee was to cover that leave that we knew to that point. And also, we were cognizant of the 1,200 hour limit, which is the limit where an employee, once you work 1,200 hours, or once we know you're gonna work 1,200 hours, you have to automatically be enrolled in Wisconsin retirement. And that's not a bad thing, but it adds about 8% to the city's costs as well as to the employees' costs too. And if it's somebody that you're only gonna keep for a couple weeks past that limit, well, it doesn't
Right.
maybe make sense to have them enrolled for retirement. Knowing that there's some uncertainty with when the other employee will return, it looks like in the first week in July, the limited term employee would hit that 1,200 hour threshold. With that, it's probably not the worst thing to extend them at least through May and potentially through June as well at this point. So what I would ask the committee is for an authorization that we could extend that limited term employment. Instead of ending at the end of April, extend it basically another 8 weeks through June. It would be about $3,900. It's $10 an hour. And the only benefit we're paying right now is the statutory FICA. It's federal and Social Security and Medicare taxes that the city pays. We do have a couple of staffing issues with seasonal employees. Every summer, we're not sure that the one college age maintenance person comes back. Usually we find out March or April. And then with Jim Albright in the park, right now it looks like he's coming back in early May and has only really committed through July 4th. And so that's 2 other positions that are there right now. Knowing that we have a limited term employee right now, we don't have to train them brand new. And if we run into a situation where neither of our other employees are coming back, potentially we could reevaluate our staffing that way. I think that discussion's probably going to come back to you next month on seasonal staffing, but for now what I'm looking for is just approval for that extension for the limited term employee.
Seems to make sense.
Yep. So, make a motion to extend the limited term position through June of 2015.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries. All right. Where are we at now? Possible discussion, possible action on the 1-month extension of the John Deere lease.
Yep, we've got that smaller John Deere tractor. Right now, we did lease it for 4 months. So we have it till the end of March. And the thought is, at the end of the lease, either we can turn it back, we could extend month to month up to a year if we wanted, but you know, each month would be a decision we could make. Or we could look at purchasing the machine outright. If we purchase this machine outright at some point, they will credit us 100% for our lease or rent payments that we've made towards the purchase price. I don't know for sure that we're in a position to decide on whether or not we should buy this tractor. The reason we have it is because it's fairly inexpensive for the broom, the blower, and our winter operation. But right now, historically, winter has kind of crept through April. And the thought is, if we're only, and when I say late March, I think it's actually March 19th, March 20th is when we'd have to turn this tractor in. The $750 a month is what the lease is on the tractor, and I'd like to weigh in with the committee to see if that would be okay to just extend the lease 1 month at this point, because we've gotten our use out of it. We've talked about that in the past. But I don't know that we're ready yet to talk about whether we should buy it. And I don't know that we're ready to say we should rent it all through the year either, but at least for 1 more month, we know that we'll have a use for it.
Good. Do you need a motion for that then?
Yeah, if you'd,
So I would just make a motion to extend it for 1 more month, and at that time we'll reevaluate what we'd like to do moving forward.
Okay, I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Alright. Discussion and possible action on the park storage shelter conversion.
yep. Last year, we did, once we started talking about that new restroom being built and the old restroom being torn down, we did have a garage in there where we parked our lawnmowers. I had a little bit of a workshop in there. Now, we tore that down because it was basically falling down, and we could get more space in the park there. And the new restroom has replaced that. The quick and easy fix that we had looked at was the existing park shelter number 3, which is closest to that drainage pond. We had gotten, I believe it was 3 quotes on basically putting up walls to enclose that shelter. And the reason we were looking at that shelter in particular is because the support beams or the support posts are basically rotting out at the base because they'd been set not in concrete but down in gravel, and so when water would rain and snow and melt, water would end up down in those pits, and that wood hasn't really been all that great. What we've done is we've replaced some of the bases on these posts for the shelters. We chop off the post and then we fill it with concrete underneath and then try to build up something of a support there. And that works if there's 1 or 2 posts that you're doing that to, but if you end up doing it to more, or at least half of them, then you don't really have a good anchor on the building. So knowing that we've got to do something with those support posts on that shelter, the thought was, knowing we've got a lot of big projects coming up this year, a lot of expensive projects potentially, maybe it's not the best time to be looking at just building a brand new garage from scratch.
Right.
The lowest quote that we had was about, I think it was $5,500 or $6,000. Replace the support beams, replace some of the damaged, there's supports that are in that roof, and then also wall off the shelter and then put in a garage door on each end. The thought was for the interim, and when I say interim, I think 2 to 3 years, maybe more, we could use it as a cold storage garage. It's got power, it doesn't have water or anything, but we wouldn't look at running any water to that for now. Use it at least as a garage. Right now, over the winter, the Lions Club shelter, that yellow one, we use that as a cold storage garage in the winter. Nothing's really going on in there. We just throw all of our stuff, mowers and stuff in there. The thought is we could use that as a temporary garage, and if we go to build a more permanent garage, we could then release the shelter back to be like a covered, enclosed shelter. So it's not like we're really giving up that shelter for good. It would just be we built a new one, so we're back to even then if we would use this as a temporary storage. So I know we talked a little bit about looking at a more permanent garage, but I don't know, maybe this year is not the best year to be looking at that. Maybe, I don't know the next year is either, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, we'd like to, I did talk to Kyle Tews with Backwoods Construction. He had been the lower quote, the lower bid. We're also talking with him about the temporary offices for City Hall, some renovation there. But we did ask him to update his quote. He had said that his materials, he didn't see a very big change at all, but within the week here, he could have his quote updated.
Okay.
So if you would make a recommendation that that's the route you'd like to go, by the city council meeting on the 16th, he would have his quote updated again. Does that make sense to look into, we already have to do some repairs there, maybe enclose that. In the future, then we could release it again as a
Right.
Sure.
closed shelter.
Makes sense.
What do they
Okay.
do, what are they doing to enclose it, I guess? Just plywood or?
What he would do is he'd wall off, and he ran through, we'd still leave, the way it sits now with the posts that sit there, we'd replace those, and then it would basically wall to wall between the posts,
Uh-oh.
and then,
So just in between the posts,
yeah.
so it truly wouldn't even look temporary.
Yeah. Yeah. But then there would be two, I think is it 8-foot garage doors on each side? Be big enough to get all of our mowers through. But we do have, all the material, and he's got a little bit of a description on his quote that he'll get updated to us, and
We just want to update it for the records, but we're not really gonna go ahead.
well, it's up to you guys because technically you can't take any action on it, but the city council can though.
Right.
So if the thought was to talk about that idea of pursuing that type of a garage or shelter conversion, and if that's the case, I'd hoped I would have gotten an updated quote today, but we've had him working on a couple other things. But later this week, we should have his updated quote. That we would have for sure by the city council meeting, probably by the end of the week.
So you're just looking for a motion to get this discussion to the city council with the proposal?
Recommendation to enclose the shelter, and if that's the way you'd want to go on that.
I don't know, what do you guys think?
Recommendation to evaluate the costs of doing that. And
Yes.
possible conversion. I don't know that I want to recommend that it's for sure do it.
Okay.
Well, we could recommend it because you can always just vote no if the cost is more than you want to spend on it.
I usually when a committee recommends something though, it seems like they've done the research and it's, well, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
care to see it done this year either, but, I mean, it isn't that, I guess that it isn't that cost exorbitant either, but, what do you guys think it should?
I don't know, the one thing I'm thinking about though is that if we are gonna keep it for 2 to 3 years, that you don't want the place in the park looking shabby either. And so I guess I don't really know what the intent is with the side of it.
Yeah, there
know,
would
I'd hate
be
for it to look
there's a siding on
like an
it too.
eyesore either, too.
Is this needed by, can this wait one more month?
It could.
Well, why don't we bring
Yeah,
it
we can
back
actually
next
get the-
month and maybe we'll have better plans so we can see what he wants to do?
Sure.
Yeah.
But he can go ahead and update.
Oh, and he would
Right.
anyway.
Update
Yeah,
the
he
quote,
would anyway.
give us a drawing so we can see what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Just because if it's gonna be there a couple of years, we
Right,
don't want it to
you're
be an
right.
eyesore in the park.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Does that work with everybody?
at least that way we know what we're recommending then, to your point, Bruce.
Right.
Okay.
Which is the right way to go, so,
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Good deal.
Okay.
Okay. Discussion and possible action on street sweeping.
Yeah,
Blah, blah, blah.
we did solicit quotes. Our purchasing policy says that we've got to have multiple quotes. Right now, we've got one quote, and it's from TNC. Sweeping, that's who we've had before. We do have, our jail maintenance has mentioned that they would be willing to quote out the service. One of the things that they were looking at I believe, was that option that we were gonna throw out for extra sweeping. But as of right now, I don't have a second quote for you, so it's probably something that I'd ask you just to hold.
No,
because
let's
we
just
don't
hold it
have-
till next month.
we just
Hopefully
have
we have
the
another
one.
one.
Is there any other, like, cities that have their own streets?
Well, there's a lot
that they would
of,
sell
there's cities that have them, we've reached out to a couple of them, but the problem is, the closest one is 10, 15 miles to try to get it here, and whether they'd be willing to up and do it. It takes about a week to get through the city here, if you're really hard at it, so. We did reach out to a couple different communities on sharing that equipment, jetting equipment, that type of thing, but
out? No takers.
not so much. When you're talking to them, it sounds good, and they agree that it sounds good, but then it's a little bit more difficult to push through them that way to actually get it, so.
All right. So that waits till next month.
Right.
And that puts us down to discussion of possible action on the interim financing.
Yep, now we're we've got John Cameron from Ellers, and John, so we're in at the very end of the Public Works Committee right now.
Okay.
We've got the treatment plant, and then right away after we have the Finance Committee, and their first item is the City Hall
Okay.
financing that, so. And feel free, John, if you need to get up, close to the table here too, that'll work.
Sure. So we're talking about the treatment facility first.
Yep.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So let me pass this around. So what I've got is just a one-page handout, timeline.
There's a chair over there.
Trick.
I've got one.
Okay.
Unless that's changed.
No. No. So I think with both of these projects, City Hall and the treatment facility, I think our plan for this evening is to talk about our proposed plan of attack for financing the projects, talk preliminary timeline, and I think get some feedback as to proposed financing measures. So what I passed out is just a one-page timeline for the treatment facility. And really what we've identified really is a number of steps that would happen kind of throughout the process. But very generally, what we're proposing in terms of financing sources for this project is to take out interim financing with what's called a revenue bond anticipation note. So generally that would be anywhere from 1 to maybe 3 years. In this case, I think what we're looking at is probably about a 2-year period that this would be outstanding, and then it would be refinanced with permanent financing through the Clean Water Fund loan program, which is a subsidized loan program through the state. And right now, that offers you better interest rates than what you can find out in the open market for a project of this magnitude. So the reason for looking at doing interim financing instead of just locking in right away with the Clean Water Fund program, which is up to a 20-year loan program, is because of the sources of repayment, primarily the newly created TID 6 district, which identified a portion of the wastewater treatment facility as an item that it would be assisting in repaying the annual debt service payment for. Because of the timing of the AgriPure project with relation to the TID is now created, but as AgriPure goes through its expansion, it'll really be not until next summer when we know the full value of that project and how much of it is actually taxable, and then how much tax increment that project is going to be able to generate, and how much cash really is tax increment, how much cash we'll be able to count on an annual basis to help repay the Clean Water Fund loan. And because of that, what we're recommending in this process is to seek out interim financing first until you know the value, which is what the Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Administration would require in a situation like this. And then once that value becomes known, then go through the process of locking in that permanent financing. So that's kind of the gist of it. So with that being said, just to kind of walk you through this timetable process, and like I said, this is really, I think, still preliminary and will definitely change as this project progresses. But preliminarily, this is what we're looking at in terms of timeline. So it sounds like this month here you're going to be going out for bids for the treatment facility project. What we're showing on this timeline in terms of the second step from a financing standpoint would be going ahead with a sewer rate study to coincide with the financing. And there's a couple of reasons for doing that. Number one, when you get to that point where you see in bold May 18th, that would really be the point where the council would authorize Ellers to proceed with seeking out interim financing for the project. So ideally, you'd like to know at that point, when we're making a presentation on the interim financing itself, what is the bottom line impact, if any, on user rates? And we know there's probably going to be some, but you have multiple financing sources here. You've got the TID, you've got an industrial service agreement with AgriPure, so you've got those two sources that come into play for this type of financing. And then the other, of course, would be the user rates. So I think that's kind of an important step to kind of keep in mind as we go through this process.
With the study too, John, we'll probably, with the timeline you've got, we'll probably look at backing that up just a couple weeks.
Okay.
But we'll talk more about that, though,
Okay.
for sure, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
What my understanding is that in April 21st, you would be awarding the bids on the treatment facility.
That's the plan right now.
Okay. So then, once those bids become known, we would then take that and start to prepare a financing plan that we would bring forward to the council on May 18th. And because of the industrial service agreement, one thing I didn't touch on that kind of complicates this whole financing process, and it's something you went through the last time, is when you have an industrial service agreement, what it makes the financing is taxable versus tax exempt. And that's a process from a clean water fund standpoint when you ultimately lock into financing that doesn't affect the interest rate, but it will have an effect on the interim financing. And what we're preliminarily looking at for this interim financing is really doing kind of the same thing that you did the last time, which is a negotiated placement with a single underwriter. And we've had some what I'd call very preliminary talks with the firm that did the last
When
deal.
we refinanced in
Yeah.
2013.
Right, yep, and they have expressed interest, so that's a positive sign. So I think that's kind of the first place that we would look, but given the nature of this project, there's a lot of components to it, it would be nice to kind of go back to a familiar face in this process. So what we'd be looking at May 18th would be the council to authorize us to present on or move forward with the interim financing, possibly present on the sewer rates, and kind of look at what we're looking at that same evening. June 22nd is what we then would be looking at the award of the interim financing. So we would work with that underwriter or whoever that may be during the process to lock in terms for interim financing and present those for award on June 22nd. And then ideally what we'd be looking at would be on or around July 7th having those interim funds available, which would make it available prior to kind of that, what I think, Thad, you're looking at in terms of that
First pay request would be in
request.
July.
Yeah.
Should be in July.
So July 20th, and so you'd have funds available prior to that. So, and in terms of the dollar amount, I think, this comes right from the intent to apply form. Obviously, it'll change with when you go out for bid, but from interim financing standpoint, we'd probably be looking at taking out interim financing for the whole project amount, refinancing it in total. And that gives you kind of the greatest amount of flexibility here. So moving forward from that, going then into permanent financing, what you do is by the end of this year, you would resubmit the intent to apply for the Clean Water Fund loan, and basically that just holds your seat at the table for that permanent financing. In about August of next year, we'll know what that TID 6 increment stream is. And I think right around that time, kind of going into September, is when you guys would submit the Clean Water Fund loan application and then go through the process of locking in that interim finance, or permanent financing, which it's, it's a long ways off, but I'm tentatively identifying February of 2017 as the point where you'd lock in and you'd start, full repayment then thereon after. So that's kind of all that we have on this one.
So you're looking then at, probably in May is when we're looking at, this committee would make a recommendation on authorizing the interim financing then? And then in May 18th, and that'd be how it would get us to,
Common Council.
yeah. And that's okay?
Absolutely.
So I don't believe that we need any action tonight at all, but we will talk a little bit more, not at this meeting, but coming up pretty quickly on the sewer.
Yeah,
user
yeah, I
study.
think this really just gives you an idea of kind of what the timeline is in terms of where you are going out for bid and how financing kind of fits into that. So more food for thought, I guess, at this point than anything.
Thank you.
Sure.
You got your administrator's report, Patrick?
Yeah, it's just really, really quickly.
Okay.
Snow plowing, obviously that's been going very well. We talked a little bit with Dean. The county's been going very well on our end. With the yard waste site, again, we know that we're gonna get audited probably May, June, so we're just keeping an eye on what our scheduling could be to make sure that we've got that all up and running and that we'll pass the audit in May, June. And other than that, it's been heavy on the projects because we're looking at bidding out City Hall and the treatment plant here in a couple of weeks, so it's just been busy on that end.
When's the yard waste site open up?
I believe last year it was supposed to be April, but it was later in April though.
Right.
But we're looking at probably April this year too. Yep. Last year we had that really big pile of stuff right in the middle, and so that's kind of, we were hoping to get a chipper, and that was the problem, is we didn't get the chipper right away. So this year we're already going in with those drop sites already kind of constructed there. So
Pending the weather.
Yeah.
As soon as it dries up enough to get in there.
yep. And that's all I got.
That's all you got? Wow. Such a deal.
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna set the April meeting.
You guys normally still do it the second.
Looking at the 13th,
Yep.
Thomas Jefferson's birthday. Oh, sure. Works for me.
Works, yep.
6 o'clock. Barring any.
6 o'clock, yeah.
Okay,
It'll work.
that'll work. Any such other matters as authorized by law?
Got none.
Got none? Well, then I guess I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Yes. Go ahead. I'll second that.
I guess we're all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 6:21.